I love Formula One. I grew up watching it. And no matter what, I'll continue to watch it. Something about it is just special for me. I look forward to every practice session. I can't wait for the new liveries to come out at the beginning of a season. And I look forward to watching pre-season testing, even now. But I appreciate that Formula One doesn't always provide the best racing, especially when one car or one team starts to dominate, which does happen a lot throughout the history of Formula One. So I thought I'd give you some options. Formula One is not the only rodeo in town. There are so many motorsports you could watch, and maybe sometimes they're better. Let's start with the obvious comparison, IndyCar. I have to admit that while I've followed IndyCar from a distance, it's only been the last 2 or 3 years that I've actively watched it more regularly, and the racing is always fantastic. It's mostly street circuits and ovals, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't tend to watch the oval racing. I don't enjoy it. It just doesn't interest me. I stick to the circuits, apart from keeping an eye on the Indy 500. Fun story, I originally got interested in IndyCar when it was called Kart. There was a game on the PlayStation, I think it was just called Kart Championship, and I absolutely loved it, and that's how I actually became aware of IndyCar. IndyCar has 32 drivers across multiple teams that aren't limited to 2 drivers per team like in Formula One. The other big difference in IndyCar is that the chassis are the same for all teams, made by Dallara. It's not a completely spec series. There are ways teams can get an advantage, but for the most part, it's going to be a lot closer than Formula One, and drivers can definitely make a difference. There are always different winners. Even the best don't win every weekend, and the underdog always gets a chance. The racing is extremely tight week in, week out. It's just a great series to watch. If you want to watch something very different to that though, then you need to watch the WEC, or IMSA, more on that in a minute. WEC stands for the World Endurance Championship, and this is particularly different to other motorsports because there are multiple classes of car on the track at the same time. They are all technically racing for the outright win, but ultimately they're racing against their own class to claim the honours. Yeah, they still have to share the same track with other classes. It makes for some really entertaining situations as the faster cars have to get past the slower cars safely while also racing each other. Currently, the WEC has a hypercar class and an LMGT3 class. Hypercars are the top class, a 500 kilowatt engine alongside a hybrid system with an incredibly aggressive looking chassis. It's closed cockpit, unlike Formula One, and these cars need to be more specialist, and they need lights because they have to run at night. Recent years have seen a huge increase in manufacturers joining the top level of endurance racing. Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, Peugeot, Cadillac, BMW, Alpine are all now racing against each other in the hypercar field, alongside a full field of GT3 cars. The second GT3 class may be slower, but the racing is fierce. And alongside WEC, there are so many other standalone GT3 series around the world that you can find so much entertainment in. Races are 6 to 8 hours, with special races, such as Le Mans, being 24 hours. Le Mans this year also has an extra class that used to be standard in WEC, the LMP2s. If the WEC sounds like your cup of tea, then you're likely to love IMSA as well. It's the American equivalent. Same endurance fun, same epic 24-hour races, such as the 24 Hours of Daytona. Lots of the IndyCar drivers also take part. I also try to watch British touring cars as much as I can. I grew up watching it back when teams like Ford, Renault and Volvo were taking part. I can't watch everything these days, so I don't always get to watch it every time it's on. There just isn't enough time in the world, but man, the racing in touring cars is so good. It's very much bump and fun. Now this next one is going to be controversial, but bear with me. Formula E. I know, no sound, but let me tell you, the series has come a long way. I know the lack of sound or huge amount of tyre squeal and whine from the electric motors can really irritate some people, and maybe that's why people don't love it. I promise you though, if you give it a chance, the racing is always fantastic. It's again mostly street circuits, as the original point was to bring more awareness of the electrical potential to big cities, but they are starting to move to more actual race circuits now. Early on in Formula E, they actually couldn't last the entire race on one battery, and there was no option to charge the cars either. They actually swapped cars mid-race. But while that's hilarious, the sport has come a long way. Batteries now last the whole race, and in fact there's a real skill now in how drivers manage not only racing, but their battery levels. The cars have regen on braking, which will put some charge back into the battery, so driving styles can really make a big difference when it comes to the end of the race. Give it a chance, you never know, you might like it. I know that some of these sports are going to be harder to watch than others depending on where you live, but things like the WEC are really accessible. In fact, some teams usually have live broadcasts from inside their cars for the duration of endurance events. Even the extended highlights are really great to watch if you don't have, say, 8 hours or 24 hours to watch an entire race. I appreciate that most people can't do that. No matter the dominance in Formula One, I can't help but watch it. I still love it, and I always will, but this isn't a competition despite what you might think. There are so many other motorsports out there, and I've just touched on a few. And here's a nugget of information for you. You can actually watch them all. You don't have to choose. There doesn't have to be one that wins out over the others. There are so many motorsports, we can enjoy all of them, or we can enjoy none of them, if that's your cup of tea. At the end of the day, it's all about racing and competition. I hope this video was helpful to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then why not like and subscribe? And I'll catch you next time.